the green home came up, and we heard about it rumbling around the various organisations it was rolling around. I think that was about early '92. We heard rumours from Alan Pearce, who works for Sustainable Solutions, and he was developing these things for ACF, the Australian Conservation Foundation. And
develop what things?
He was developing the Green Home Guidelines, which were a set of guidelines that would encapsulate good practice in building a green home. And it would not only deal with energy efficiency design, it would deal with materials and appliances and size. So in the past we've worked with project home builders, and that's been a successful way for us of actually doing a design and that then gets levered out, and they might do 100, 200 or whatever it is. Plus, as well as influencing the way that that project home builder thinks and works. Siting, floor plan, construction, steel framing should not be used. Oh, I mean, here's the materials, okay? No rainforest or non-plantation timber. It's got to be insulated. Steel framing can't be used. Floor's got to be concrete slab on ground. Window frames have to be timber, and you've got a draft proof. They're the mandatory requirements. And the desirable features say timber aerated concrete block or lightweight brick cladding are preferred to standard bricks because of their lower greenhouse impacts, because of lower transport costs.
To look the same as...
Yep. Right. My view is a green home shouldn't look any different from the rest of the market. It's the same way as an energy efficient building shouldn't look any different. It shouldn't look necessarily energy efficient, or it shouldn't look necessarily green. What I tried to do is to get more fly ash to replace the cement in concrete with fly ash, which is, and again, there really hasn't been, some people know about it, some people don't. There's no ready thing where everyone's pushing the strength of concrete right to the end and trying to build, say, in summer where there's warmer weather, which means it sets quicker, because if you use a lot of fly ash in concrete in winter it doesn't set, and there's a whole range of problems involved. So, I mean, all of that fine nitty-gritty detail wasn't there, so we just said, look, get as much fly ash in as you could. Now that's a long way in terms of the specificness of how we deal with that problem from the energy rating or the appliances. So that's one example. We used recycled steel for the reinforcing, because Smorgon's, and I think that Smorgon's, all of their steel comes from recycled sources. So that's heading in the right direction. In terms of their plastic film that they produce, that's all comes from recycled, or 70% comes from recycled sources. But again, the detail of whether it's 70% recycled or 100% recycled versus strength, we're not too sure. In terms of the timber frame, we wanted to use plantation timbers, which is radiata pine. As an aside, which comes from a Steiner background that I've studied to develop, I have concerns about anything which comes from a mono plantation. Anything mono seems to me, and I have no evidence, but anything mono seems wrong, and I don't know how to deal with that yet. And maybe we should be taking timber out of forests, but logging specifically. But the on-site practices, I think that we, as well, apart from the waste, is how do we deal with things like properly installing insulation? There still hasn't been an understanding or some sort of trait. Like, installing insulation is very, very important. I mean, if you look at all of the energy figures out of buildings, if the insulated envelope is right, the other things take on far less significance. And so it's really materials and practices on site is the whole that we need to deal with. So what you have to do is you have to change the building practice of the supervisor and the tradesmen who are on the site. So if I was doing this green home again, and I don't know how this applies to building lots of these things, but for this example, I would become much more closely involved in the detailing of how we're going to do it. I've always been interested in art and science. I've always been fascinated by the interface between the left and the right side of the brain, of how you reconcile those two things. And I've always had, apart from the interface, I've had an interest in science and an interest in arts and the beyond and the cosmic. What I try and teach is a holistic approach which accepts that we do have left and right side of the brain, that we do need to address all of the issues, and that we should come to some understanding that they're not separate issues, but they're just parts of the whole. And that seems to be a third approach.
Perhaps just to finish, in 20, 30 years' time, when you're tripping off around doing your
Australia loop.
How would you like to
Or a
think?
beach bum on them.
Yeah.
How would you like to think that people remember or consider David Oppenheim? What impact would you like to have?
I would love to be remembered as a person of integrity who cared about a holistic approach that took all the issues and balanced them and arrived at a reasonable solution. That sounds really Mother Earth statement, doesn't it? But that's, yeah, that really cared about the way that we sit on the earth.